Welcome to the April 20th, 21st Charter Township of Canton Board of Trustees meeting. I call it to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Welcome back to Clerk Segrist after having his brand new daughter, Sloan. Clerk Segrist, can you please call the meeting to order? Roll call.
Yes. Borninski.
I'm here and I'm in my house in Canton Township.
Foster.
I'm here and I'm from my house in Canton Township.
Ganguli.
Hello, I'm here and I'm here at my home in Canton Township.
Graham Hudak.
Here in Canton Township Hall.
Segrist Canton here. Slavens.
Good evening from Canton Township.
And Snyderman.
I'm here in Canton Township.
Great, thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda with an add of a presentation on the rental inspection process?
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Thank you. Please call a roll call on the motion.
Borninski.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Ganguli.
Aye.
Graham Hudak.
Aye.
Segrist, aye. Slavens.
Aye.
And Snyderman.
Aye.
Great, thank you. First item on the study session agenda is a discussion on the proposed fire station number 4 need and feasibility. And Director Stockline, do you want to share your documents?
We do.
Okay. I think you should be able to go ahead and do that. Do you want me to share it or do you have? Okay, there you go.
Got it?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, you guys can all hear me okay? All right. Well, thanks for coming tonight. We appreciate you being here on this cold winter night, right? So, but at any rate, I apologize for the late packet delivery. We wanted to make sure that you guys had all the data so that you guys can make an informed decision. So we were really collecting a lot of data there at the end there. So you guys can see everything that we're talking about. So without further ado, it's obvious myself here and Jamie Strasner, the deputy chief. And then I also have Barb to my right here that you can't see, but she's helping us out.
Hang on, we're going to switch the screen now.
Trying to
We'll try it again.
fix one thing here so that I can use this clicker. Give me 1 second. While she's working on that, I will start going on the original, there you go. So the 5-year strategic plan. So this is really what we based our analysis off of, 5 years, I shouldn't say 5 years ago, back in 19 when we arrived at the strategic plan, we went to external stakeholders, asked them their opinion, talked to internal stakeholders, and this was one of the goals that ended up being in the strategic plan. The goal prior to this 3.1 was obviously finishing Station 2. As you know, we've pretty much completed that, and we've been on track of moving on from step to step as we move through the strategic plan. There's a lot of stuff that still needs to get finished over Station 2. We're still demoing it, but as I said, we've continued to evaluate. We continue to go back, do our measurements of success on these strategic plan objectives and goals. And so this leads us to goal 3 here. And goal 3, obviously, the objective is to evaluate the response areas and the requirements for the fire station 4, and analyze our call volume. We use a number of tools to do that, from ISO ratings to our accreditation requirements, also to NFPA 1710, which is our community risk assessment, our effective response force when responding to fires, our staffing the apparatus, and our first due really lays out the guidelines that we look for in our responses to any incident, whether it be fire or medical or EMS in nature. So with that being said, we continue to analyze this, and that's why we're here before you today. We believe that this is the next step in our strategic plan, is to start moving forward and give you the recommendations that the data is driving us towards. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jamie for a little bit here.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm going to take you through some data slides. Some of them are going to be not really repeat data, but things that you might have seen before in the past. But at the end of this, hopefully we can demonstrate the need and why we think Station 4 should be placed where we believe it should be placed. This first slide is something that is it's a 10-year look at our rising run volume. And this is a 42% increase from 2010 to 2020. It's worth noting that in 2020, we did have a slight reduction, and we're definitely attributing that to the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently for 2021, if things keep going the way they are, we are on schedule for 9,125 calls. This is fire and medical, and it's April, so it's a little early to be making these sorts of predictions, but that's the way we feel this is going to start heading for 2021. So maybe not to 2019 numbers just yet, but still a definite increase. And I believe that as we keep looking at census data and we keep observing how many people are actually in the township and needing service, these numbers are going to continue to rise. Okay. Oops, thanks too many. There we go. All right, mutual aid. Always a big topic for us. Our mutual aid numbers, you guys might have seen this slide before as well. This is in direct correlation to our staffing and how many ambulances we're able to actually put on the road. In 2020, we can see that mutual aid actually went down in requests from 107 to 74. That is in direct relation to the amount of ambulances we had. Last year, we were able to put 4 ambulances on duty daily, and that necessitated, well, a significant reduction in the need to request mutual aid. In 2021, even with that increased run volume though, what we've been able to do since we've opened the new Station 2 is put a 5th ambulance in service each day. And with that 5th ambulance, it has really curtailed the need for any sorts of mutual aid requests. And when we're talking about agency resiliency and the ability of us to handle overlapping runs, which I'll get to in just a few moments, this is one of the telltale signs of saying whether or not the agency is resilient and offering a consistent response to medical or fire needs within the township. Okay. All right, this next slide is just taken right out of our standard of cover, right out of our accreditation documents. And this is older census data. Unfortunately, we still, and I'm sure you guys as well would like to see the new census data, but we don't have it yet. So we're still going to base a lot of our decision-making on old census data. And I think we're well within our area, our reasoning to say that a lot of these numbers have increased, right? I mean, we're talking about population here on this slide of 90,000. I think everyone can agree that that population has probably increased since this data was run. But significant areas of note for this slide are section 24, which is on our far east corner of the township, has our most populated area, right? That's over there by Finley and Lots Road and that general area, Palmer, Haggerty. And it's also one of our, well, I won't say it's our most busiest zone, but it's definitely rising in the needs of response for that area. The other part of this whole thing too that I wanted to highlight for you guys is that each one of these sections is what we call a response zone, right? So we're 36 square miles. That's the way we do this. That's exactly how we divvy up what station is going to what location. And we can also then identify what's in each one of these zones so that we can attach a little bit of risk analysis to them. What's going on in section 24? You know, what's happening? What kind of buildings are in section 36? Right? Is there an extra need for different apparatus to be in different stations? That's how we use this kind of data. But for this particular purpose, I just wanted to show you guys that the red lines that are there are obviously the station dividers. So that southeast corner, even going up into some of Station 2's area, is all handled by Station 1 right now. Okay. On that same slide that I was just talking about prior, this is broken again down by each zone. This is our average response time to these zones. This is from when dispatch picks up the phone and we actually arrive on scene. And it's worth noting here that the red bars are the zones that we believe are to be our furthest away, our hardest to get to areas. So when people request our services in these sections, it's taking us longer and longer to get there. In the packet that we sent, there's a slide just ahead of this that talks about the actual run volume to these zones. And it's worth noting that 24% of our entire run volume is in the southeast corner of the township on those from section 23, 24, 25, 26, that little blurb that I showed you earlier on that one zone, that's where a lot of our run volume is. So we have a real hard time getting crews there in a real timely fashion. And this here is what I was talking about earlier when we talked about what's going on in each one of these zones. We have one of these pages for every zone in the township. And we measure each one by risk assessment. We've listed zone 24, which is that highest populated zone that I was talking about earlier. We have that risk assessment set as high, and that's really based on just the numbers of how often we're in that zone and how long it takes us to get there. Those response times down at the bottom of that page that say 90% total response, those are in the 90th percentile. So that's saying that, that's not saying that that's how long it takes us 90% of the time. That's saying that 90% of the time we're there less than this. Well, for instance, in 2020, 90% of the time we were there for EMS runs in under 13 minutes. The problem with that statement, though, is that in our accreditation documents, we said that we are going to do better than that 13 minutes. And that's what we're always trying to do, is continuously improve and strive upon doing something better. We believe, though, that in those accreditation documents where we talk about we're going to be on scene to mitigate that emergency in under 8 minutes is not even feasible to be done in some of the zones that we have, especially in the southeast corner. So we're going to have to readdress that, and we readdress that by, again, coming to you and making these recommendations to try and move the station locations to offer a more consistent response. All right, coming up on almost the end here of this data stuff, but this one right here is a big slide. This one takes a long time for us to pull, and in the document that we were able to send to you guys, we broke this down by year. And what this thing is showing us is simultaneous call volume that occurs throughout the year. And basically what it's saying is that one single event, which means one event occurs without another event occurring, right? Just a standalone medical call, standalone fire alarm, standalone house fire. That happens about 55% of the time over the last 5 years. But as those runs continue to start piling on top of one another, meaning I have another run before this other one even cleared, that is identified on the left of this slide by the colors. And as you can see, as we're in the green, I was trying to use that as, hey, we're okay because it's still green. We have enough units. We talked about adding that 5th ambulance. We had 4 ambulances in service. And last year we put the 5th one, or I'm sorry, earlier this year we put the 5th one in. This really identifies the need between staffing and mutual aid. So when those numbers to the left start getting up into the 5 and 6 range, that's when we start needing those requests for mutual aid. But as I said, we added the 5th ambulance. So the good news with this slide is that the percentages are low. And this means that we're doing a decent job in mitigating those mutual aid requests. The downside of this slide, though, is that we also, in our accreditation documents, said that we're going to put 15 people on the scene of a high-risk, low-frequency event, meaning a house fire, either in a commercial setting or a residential setting. If these units are tied up on these other runs, then we're not going to have the ability to put those people where they need to be for those high-risk, low-frequency house fires. So that is, again, why we are making this recommendation that if we can add more people to handle these runs, number one, we'll never need mutual aid, which is great, but it's also offering a resilient, consistent approach to how we respond in the township. Okay, and then finally, these last 2 maps, I think we might have showed these to you guys a few times now. The map on the left is our current response time area, highlighted by GIS and using current drive times to get to these areas of the township. As we can see, the southeast corner, we have plenty of red and beige-ish areas, and those are 8 to 10 minute areas. Definitely concerning, especially along that Michigan Avenue corridor and even the I-275 corridor. Really makes it tough for us to get there in the time that we're telling everyone that we're trying to make it in, right, in that 8 minutes. But with the addition of a Station 4 in the southeast corner, you can see what it does to the Michigan Avenue corridor. It turns it green. It turns that I-275 corridor green, which means again that we can hit these spots of the township. As a matter of fact, Station 4 would most likely be responsible for the entire southeast, south center, and southwest portion of the township because of that Michigan Avenue corridor. And that station will definitely be busy, as I said, with 24 to 25% of the run volume. It's significant, which in turn then would also reduce the amount of runs that Station 1 and Station 2 are taking at the same time, which means that, you know, every time Station 1 goes out, we're pulling rigs from Station 2 to come into Station 1's area. Those things wouldn't happen anymore. And then that resiliency slide that we were talking about earlier stays in the green much more often.
All right, so if I let Jamie talk about data, he would do it all night. for
All
you
night
guys.
long.
I told him, I said 10 minutes. I said, that's all the data they can handle. But at any rate, you have a lot of information in that packet that we sent you. So by all means, if there's questions about the data that we've presented here tonight or in that packet, reach out to us and we can explain that a little bit better. But we don't want to take up all your time explaining, you know, getting down too deep in the weeds there on data. But it's pretty clear that the data, you know, we use data to drive our recommendations, and there's clear information there that shows the need for that station in that area. So moving on from that, I really want to talk about the financial side of things and the considerations that really are going to end up being on your lap. And that's the expenditures that we're going to have to spend on the property, the building, the apparatus, personnel for annual salaries, and then the appropriations for that as well. So with that being said, we do own some property down on the corner of Lilly and Michigan Avenue. This was kind of falls right into the GIS mapping of where we need that location perfectly. And the two parcels there, one's 8.5 acres, the other one's 7, almost 8 acres. They believe that they are for sale, or the township's owned them forever. So obviously, you know, there's some general transfer that would have to take place, obviously coming out of the fire budget back into general, and that would have to be worked out. So I don't have those estimates with me, knowing what the property value is or any of that, but it is the township's property. So that gives us the advantage of having that, and probably saving a lot of money from going out and purchasing a different piece of property. So you can see here, Partners was kind enough to go in here and do some preliminary drawings free of charge. They also did some construction estimates for us, so that was very helpful for myself and the deputy chief as we move through this process, trying to figure out exactly what we could present to you. So as you can see, this station here, what I had Partners do was tell us exactly the same exact station that we just built it up there on Warren Road, what it would cost us to build down here in this piece of property. And also the ideal thing about this Lilly Road project is Lilly Road dead ends right there, which is sitting right there in front of the methane plant for the landfill. So it's kind of a dead end street there that nobody's really using, and we're still on that main thoroughway of Michigan Avenue. So it makes the perfect location for us for responding and kind of staying out of the public's way. So the construction costs, when you break these down, looking at what Partners had suggested, I told them, like I said, the same exact station, and you can see that there's obviously an increase compared to 2 years ago when we originally built the other station. So I think we were at about $6.5 million for the other station. This one will be about $7.5 million. That's including the other costs with furnishing, appliances, all the other things that we have to do in there, you site work. You can see that total estimate is 7.5 million. With that being said, we know that the township board has some new goals and strategies that we're looking at. And that means, looking into alternate energy, whether that be solar panels or geothermal. One of my questions to partners was, hey, we're right there at the landfill. Is there a way that we can use the methane gas to fuel the station? And it's quite possible. But I think that we need to really dive into some of those things a little bit deeper, because I'm not smart enough to know if that methane gas will continue out of that dump for the next 100 years, or if that, goes away after 20 years. So those are questions that probably need to be answered by engineers that are far, far brighter than I am. But with that being said, we know that when we looked into some alternate energy at the other station, when we talked about like geothermal or solar panels, we were talking, $300,000 price tags, $400,000, $1 million price tag. So it really depends on what the township goals and how we can align with those, what you're looking at moving forward. But you can see, I think that overall, we didn't see a huge price increase compared to where we were at with the building cost before. I believe just about $1 million. Not that that's not a lot of money, trust me. I know that's a lot of money, but so with that station, this is the bigger portion of the finance that I worked with Wendy on a little bit. We need 12 firefighters to fill that station to start with. You may ask, why do we need a station that large again in that portion of the township, right? And the answer to that is pretty simple. This is going to be the last fire station we're building in the township. This is the 4th fire station. We need to have enough room that as we continue to see the growth of the township, we will have that space to grow. On top of that, we know that that Michigan Avenue corridor, as well as 275, are our busiest areas to use that heavy rescue. Our heavy rescue carries all of our large extrication equipment, our jaws of life, the cutters, all that stuff that we use on extrication for large vehicles and small vehicles. And it makes perfect sense. I'm not saying that we're doing that right now, but or we would do that right away, but we would have to, look at the data and see exactly if that fits in there. And there may be a better response times for that piece of apparatus out of that station. Also, with that being said, that leaves that extra bay for another ambulance. If down the road we need to hire more firefighters and then just staff that station up because we're really busy down there, it gives us the same ability that we did at Station 2 to put 2 ambulances out of that station. So with that being said, to start the station, you really need 12 firefighters, or I should say 9 firefighters and 3 captains to staff that station, because we put 4 in there per day, per shift. Now, with that being said, you can see that we're asking for 19 full-time positions here. With that 19 full positions, that's really adding 2 personnel per shift extra. And I know Trustee Snyderman had asked a few months back about our personnel and the overtime cost, and that's really starting to address that, right? We know that once we get 19 more personnel on duty, we're talking about a 95-person department, right? With 4 people off per day. That creates issues for allowing staff to have adequate time off that they've earned, PTO time. So it doesn't solve the issue like Trustee Seidemann was talking about, but it certainly starts moving us in the right direction. And I think that staffing studies down the road would probably say, hey, we've got this going and we reevaluate this at another time. But to really get this fire station moving, this is what we would need for as far as personnel. And the reason that you'll see the EMS coordinator, I know that we had also spoke about our recent contract where we added a chief training officer that kind of oversees fire and EMS. And we really need to break that down. When you start getting a department that large, you really need to have a lot of credits that are tracked. We need a lot of re-established training that continues to go on for both firefighting and for paramedic skills. And we really need to break that into 2 categories as a fire and an EMS coordinator training chief. We are, one of the largest departments in Western Wayne County. And with Jamie and I, we are the smallest staffed as far as administration goes. Every single department on the comparison has a minimum of 4 up to 8 or 9 staff that work in the administration. So you can see that we're not trying to get the world here. We're just trying to make sure that we have enough staff to cover all of the needs of the department. So with that being said, that 2.6 is an annual cost. So we know that we have these costs up front, right, to build the station, to buy the property, to buy the fire engine and the squad that you see there. And we know that those costs are going to be a one-time cost, and then it's kind of built and we're there, and then we have maintenance on those things. But this is an annual cost that I just want you to be aware of so that you're educated on that decision and you can make an informed decision moving forward. Bringing it into this year, and you kind of just a breakdown of what we're talking about, and that once again comes up to 18.7 million roughly, with a 2.6 million reoccurring costs for us. One thing to keep in mind, this isn't all the cost, right? And so, once we add another 19 personnel to the organization, now all of a sudden we have increased costs on uniforms, right? We have increased radio costs. We have increased turnout gear to purchase. We're going to add another set of apparatus at another building. Well, as you know, and you're going to see next week, right? We're coming back to ask for more apparatus because we have to constantly change. That's another, $1 million every X amount of years that's going to have to be spent. So I just want you to keep all of that in mind as we move forward, to be upfront and honest with that, right? Because this is just not an $18 million cost. It continues to go on, and it will obviously change, right? As we evaluate all of these costs for these firefighters. So back into this, I asked Director Trumbull to just kind of type up what it would look like. And I'm not saying that this is what you're going to do, but I just wanted you to have an idea of what impact it would be on a taxpayer with a millage increase for the fire department. As you all know, the fire department's on the special assessment district, right? And that's really up to you guys. I know that we've lowered it a couple of times in the past year for the fire millage. I don't know if that means that you go back to them, but I just wanted you to see kind of what kind of impact that would be with a $500,000 increase. So this is talking about 0.6, which would cover that annual $2.6 million a year for staffing. And that's kind of where it ends up at, $75 per household for a $300,000 household. But I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's really not my area of expertise. It's really something that would come into budget considerations with Director Trumbull. So this is the important slide here that I think kind of lays out exactly what we're talking about when we're comparing to other departments. Not that I compare ourselves to other departments all the time, because I feel that we are a far more superior department, and we've operated in a very fiscally responsible manner for several years since I've been here, all the way back to Director Santamaro. You can see that our census is at 90,000, and we're estimating at 103. That's kind of the number that Tim Fawcett put out a couple years back, that he expected this census to come in at, the 2020 census. So you can see when we're adding that additional cost into the budget, bring it up to $20 million. Once we increase the census, it's still only increasing our per capita cost at $2 per firefighter, which is pretty incredible when you start looking at the other numbers there. And there's a lot of things that can be skewed in this, and you can take it in different ways, right? For example, we're putting 103 for our census. Well, everybody else is still looking at 2010 census. Well, we know that, some of these departments or some of these organizations are going to lower their census with the 2020, right? And so they're going to end up having even a higher per capita for firefighter. We know that, for example, like Livonia there, they have a $15 million budget. The last that I had heard when Chief Whitehead was over there was that that didn't include all their capital prices, right? So they still have other things that they're purchasing from different budget line items. So there is some variances in here. So I don't want you to, say, oh, hey, look at this, this isn't correct. There are variances in that, but overall, we know that our numbers in Canton there are correct. And we know that we're looking at the sworn personnel and how many, census and the budget, and we run very efficiently. Like I said, when I compare us to, a Dearborn that has, several assistant chiefs and training officers, I believe that they're at 8, right? Shelby Township has 5 administrators, we've gone down the line and we've looked at all those numbers and different things when we go out to ask for those comparative analysis from these departments. And we know that we've always run lean. And that's really what sets us apart, because we handle a lot of runs. When we look at, a Livonia that's usually about 12,000 runs a year, and we're hitting, 10,000 runs a year, right? Or a Westland that's the same, right? We get into like West Bloomfields, and their numbers are a little less than ours in the 8,000 range, right? So it's really comes back to the age-old saying, right? We can work with whatever you want to give us, and we will make it work. But you guys really determine the level of service, and you guys decide how we're going to implement that, or we decide how we'll, make it operational for us. But I feel that you have the data in front of you. You certainly can make informed decisions from that. And I know they're tough decisions to make. I know that we're not asking for little things, and we're coming right after we just had a new fire station built in Station 2's area there. That was done out of planning. We know that we needed that station before it fell apart, as you guys know. But I think that following the goals and objectives, it's the right time to come to you with the proposal and put it back onto you guys to make those decisions for us. I know that it's not easy, like I said, and we appreciate all of your support that you continue to give us. And whatever decisions you make, we're more than happy to carry those out for you. So we're happy to take any questions. I don't want to keep you guys here all night. So you got more stuff to cover with Greg.
Thank you. Any questions? Michael?
Can we, Chris, or Director Stockline, can you go back to the slide that had the $18 million number on it? It looked to me like we may have been counting some of the money twice, because you've got that last slide. It looks, I think we're looking at like an $11 million expense, because you've got the 6.5 million, then the 1 million, and then you've got 7.5 million there. I think the 18 million is counting the construction twice. So,
Yeah, you're right.
It is.
You're
yeah,
right. So you just saved yourself.
18 million. I was like, "Ah," and then
I'm sorry.
oh, wait a minute. I think they've got construction in there 2 times. So
You're right.
So that 1 year, it looks like an $11 million expense, and then you've got the 2.6 reoccurring expense, kind of.
Correct.
Is that okay? Good.
Unless
Okay.
it was over a number of years and you have the annual expense more than 1 year. I don't know if that was being considered or.
Yeah, I really shouldn't have put those all together. But yeah, you're talking about 11.12 million, and then an annual reoccurring of 2.6 million.
Okay.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Kate?
Thank you. Chris, being new to all of this, I'm wondering, how is mutual aid handled as far as costs go?
So actual cost on mutual aid, it doesn't cost us anything. We are signing a mutual aid agreement with Western Wayne departments. But what I would say is that when we allow other departments to come in and do that transport, we're seeing an extended response time as they come into our area. And then secondly, we do not get to collect on those fees for those transports, so that they are collecting on those fees. And those roughly range anywhere from, $1,500 to $2,500 that we bill insurance companies for. So we lose out on that income. And finally, there is a charge for West Wayne Mutual Aid only when we use the hazardous materials team or the USAR team. We get billed from those services, which we in turn go back out to bill whichever business created that incident.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tanya?
Yeah, maybe I missed it, but is there like, have you done an estimate on having, as this new fire station comes in, as you said, you're probably going to have an increase in your fees income, or is that considered an income? I don't know how exactly the revenues happen, in fire stations. Like you just said something about we don't collect the fees, we don't get the fees. So is that considered some sort of an income? I'm trying to understand.
So if I understand your question correctly, it's how do we collect our fees for our service? And so the simple answer to that is we do that through a billing company called AccuMed. So whenever we do a transport, we can bill for what the insurance industry sets for a standard for an ALS transport or a basic life support transport. That money comes into us. They take a percentage off the top for doing all the billing. One thing to be very clear is that we're certainly not a business that makes money. The money that we bring in from our transports doesn't even come close to paying what our budget comes up to, the $17 million. We're talking, I believe last year collected just about, $2 million or $1.5 million. So it doesn't even come close. This is just kind of an offset. When we went to advanced life support back in 1997, we decided to charge those fees at that point, because prior to that, we didn't really charge. And at that point, we started just trying to make up for the extra costs we had in the advanced life support industry there.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I kind of, you gave me an estimate of, how much you get in, and really that doesn't cover anything. Like it's just very minuscule in terms.
It's
of
very
the budget.
minuscule when you look at the big picture.
Another question I had, say, we said that by the end of this year, we came to I don't know the process, but like we have a millage by, like, how long will this construction take, or this will be like, what is the timeline, or how many months does it take for you to have this built?
So just for an example, Station 2 took roughly 3 years to build. And we would probably see that same kind of speed here, because we still have to go out, do a bid for an architect. We have to do a bid for a building company, all these things. There is some cost savings that we could do. And that's why I kind of proposed the same building, because we could save a lot on architect and engineering fees. If we just take that building and put it down there, right? I know they have to change some of the foundations and stuff like that. So it would change the architectural and engineering fees quite a bit, quite lower, but you're probably looking at a good couple years. One thing that I would point out is that we know, as you all know, right, it's very difficult to hire firefighters. And as you read that last paragraph of that packet, the recommendation was to start hiring firefighters sooner than later, because we know that we could use the help right now, right? We know that our overtime's up. We know that since we opened the Station 2, we're going to 19 personnel. That leaves 4 off per day with a 23 on a shift. We still don't have 23 per shift, because we obviously, as you saw, we had one firefighter resign. We're still trying to get that other firefighter out of the training academy. It takes time to get these firefighters hired, and it takes time to get them trained up. Just a firefighter off the street that we hire in, we know we've got 3 to 4 months to get them trained to just handle medical runs and kind of be out there on their own. So with that being said, that was the recommendation in the back there, is that we really move forward on the hiring process. If this is something that you're interested in doing, If it's not something you're interested in doing, then we come back to you and we're going to say, looking at the staffing analysis, we need to move in this direction because we're going to continue to see the issues that like Trustee Snyderman had talked about. So you could easily see a hiring process to hire this many personnel take a good 2 to 3 years, matching the construction time.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen?
Thanks, Anne Marie. Thanks, Jamie, Chris, for the presentation. It's something that we've been talking about for a number of years now, so it's good to see it coming up for discussion. And I guess the one question I'd have is I'm not totally clear on the millage discussion and how much we're really going to need. I guess one thing that maybe I didn't see was how much of the millage we're using today and what we're using it for, and is there any excess in what we use today, or are we already in the red on that millage for the fire side of things? And I don't need that answer today. I don't see Wendy here today anyway, so I'm sure she would have something to say on that, unless you wanted to comment on it.
Well, I would just say that, I know that we have been putting into the fund balance for the past couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Well, quite a few years. We also just took out, a bond for the fire station, so that's going to make a difference as well, trying to get that paid back. And this was a conversation that I had with Director Trumbull just earlier today. I said, if the finance questions come up, I'm happy to answer what I know, but in all reality, it's not fair for me to sit here and say, we can afford this, we can't afford that. That's really her ball of wax. And I think that that's probably an answer that she would answer better than me.
Yep, understandable. So, and especially you brought up, how much do we need to cover the cost? Do we have to bond for this, that kind of thing? So that needs to be part of this discussion going forward. So I guess, Madam Supervisor, for you, I guess, how do you see this process going forward in order to make a decision? Like, what are the steps to get there?
Well, I think, like you said, we'll get some more details from Wendy, and she can lay out the financial plan for this. And then we might have to come together again for a small presentation at one of the board meetings and discuss next steps. Do we move forward with, bonding or millage, basically as Greg had described? So I will get with Wendy on that this week.
Yeah, I think we need some time to sort through this information and also understand the implications. I mean, the numbers you put out there in terms of the need make sense. Just want to make sure we're all comfortable on how we're going to pay for this.
Yeah. So I can add that. Okay. Summer?
I just want to echo Trustee Steineman's concerns and wanting to hear from Wendy what all of our options are on the pay for. But I also want to thank Chris and Jamie for the presentation. We've known that response time in this area has been an issue for a while. And so I am interested in figuring out what that solution is and working towards that solution as someone who lives on that side of town.
Yeah. Anyone else? Thanks. And that is one question, Chris, just adding on to what they said. So you're going to be down in that section of town. Do you see us being pulled into assisting more with Wayne Westland because we are down there, or do they have something nearby? Have you seen their maps?
Yeah, Wayne's fire station is right at Wayne and Michigan Avenue, pretty much. Wayne Road, Michigan Avenue. And Westland has one at Palmer and Newburgh Road. So I don't think that placing a station down there is necessarily going to make us respond more to that area because they're calling us as they need us anyways. But it would certainly help us to get to their location faster. Would be on that side of the town. So in that regards, when we are going on those mutual aids, because we're sending them help when they request it anyways, it could reduce the amount of time that our vehicles are out of service, handling one of their runs as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. Michael?
Can I ask, so post State Fire Station number 2, what's the status of the reserve fund on the fire fund? Is there any money left in the?
Are you talking about the contingency?
No. So fund balance. Do you have anything? You've been adding to fund balance over the years. I believe that part of the financing for Fire Station number 2 that we would use money out of the fire fund balance. And do you know the balance of that account? I do feel bad because Director Trumbull's not on here.
Yeah, well, I know that we did pay for $2.5 million out of fund balance for the fire station, and we bonded the rest of that money. With the current balances in there, I could not tell you.
Okay, yeah. I think, I like the way we structured the financing of the CIP and the Fire Station number 2, where we used a combination of bonding and reserve. I think definitely weary of taking on a substantial amount of bonds at this point. We've been able to budget based on growth, and that's going to change soon. Not today, but it will in the future. And long-term financial obligations, it's like when you're buying your first house, you take out that huge mortgage. Later on in life, you start kind of slowing things down as you become less aggressive and see a less of a length of time at which you will recoup that. So that's one thing I think it's important. One thing to think about is we do have other bonds that expire later on down the line. And we bring that up every time we talk about an unfunded project. So that's something else to think about. If we want to start talking about millage and SAD money, one issue that's always kind of given me a little bit of heartburn is once we stopped transferring the SAD recapture to the DDA, we have the township continued an obligation where we would fund the DDA to the tune of about $500,000 a year. That's money that we directly transfer to the DDA. That we kind of lowered the SAD on one side of it. I think it was fire. We kept it at the same for police, if I'm not mistaken. One thing to think about would be to potentially sunset that transfer to the DDA if it's a better use of funds for it to go back and increase the SAD. There are ways to kind of winnow this thing down, if you will. If you've got money transferring every year to fund balance, if you've got a transfer of $500,000 a year to the DDA, that $6 million number might not be for that annual cost. You might be able to whittle that down. I am weary of a tax increase after the roads millage so recently was passed in 2018. That said, you made the case numerous times to us about the need for the fire station. And so I look forward to, what you all come up with administratively as a recommendation and what the timeline might look like. Anyway.
And to make a point to yours, there are other options that we can do, right? We don't have to go out and buy $1 million worth of apparatus, right? We're replacing some apparatus right now, right? And we can work with certain apparatus. We're going to bring in these new pieces of equipment here shortly. You'll see next week on the budget to follow with our strategic plan or on the RBA that we're going to be requesting this stuff, right? So maybe there's options if we know we're going to do this, right? Then we hold on to a piece of apparatus and we kind of put it in reserve, and then we can come back and use that at a later date. So there's options like that that we can do that, right? If we end up doing, a certain amount of personnel right now, we can certainly pull personnel out of a station, put them down there. I mean, there's other ways of working around things that we don't have to jump all in at one point. But just throwing that out there, to be up and running, the recommendations we make, that was for a purpose, right? So that you can see worst case scenario, and this is what it's going to cost to do that. We can figure other ways if you as a board decide, hey, we want to fund this, we want to go in this direction, we need to do this, and this first. We can work with you and certainly make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Additional question about Madam Supervisor, may I ask an additional follow-up question?
Yeah.
Sorry. Are all fire stations kind of have 19 personnel? Do they all have kind of 3 captains and then subsequent 16 or 15 firefighters and then I think 1 EMS supervisor? Or is that kind of like what we do from a service level here? Is there a model where maybe like, do some communities have maybe more modest or smaller fire stations that have less of a reoccurring annual cost? Like, is that, I think was it 2.6 million? Is that a firm number, or is there room there?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, we can certainly, we can hold off on an EMS coordinator. Like I said, it's Jamie and I upstairs right now. We've added a training officer through the contract, the bargaining contract, right? So we know that we have that additional help coming that's kind of oversee all the training, fire and EMS. Even with that person, we'll be at 3 administrative personnel upstairs. And like I said, every department, even the smallest ones around us, the very minimum they have is 4. It's a lot of work. We've got, like I said, we've got paramedic training. We train every single paramedic, their continuing education for the renewals. We keep track of their licenses. We make sure that that training takes place for all these firefighters. On top of that, Michigan Firefighter Training Council is now coming out with another 45 additional credits for the fire service side of things. So we have to train on ladders, fire extinguishers, trucks, all these other things that are continuing to add on. So with that being said, in our contract, we have it that we won't have an outstation without an engine and a squad there. So the 4 personnel. So that kind of ties our hands, but that's pretty much the norm. And we want an officer to be in charge of one of those, out crews, to have somebody to oversee that and supervise that. It's, the responsible thing to do for that. Does that answer your question?
Great. Anyone else? Thank you. So we'll have Director Trumbull come up with some financial options, some scenarios we can look at and discuss, and then discuss our next steps after that. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks,
thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Director Hohenberger with the youth sports in the Canton community.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to have a little bit of time with you on youth sports this evening. Obviously, you can see I have several people in here with me tonight. John Lefevre, our Deputy Director, Abe Vinitsky, our Parks and Sports Supervisor, and Anne-Marie Carvala, our Sports Center Coordinator. So Anne-Marie is going to be doing the bulk of the lifting for us tonight, talking about the youth sports programs and the contracts. So one of the things we're looking to do tonight is give you a good overview of the youth sports agreements that we have in place, because next week at the traditional board meeting, we'll be having 3-year renewal contracts for each of the youth sports groups coming before you for approval next week. So this is just kind of in prep for that, hopefully get ahead of any questions you may have. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and let Anne-Marie take it away if I do everything properly.
All right, so we're right away.
Yep.
Okay, well, welcome tonight to our little trip through youth sports in Canton. We do have a very, very long, rich tradition of sports in Canton, just trying to meet all the family's needs. And so I wanted to just take you through a little glimpse of when a family moves to Canton or they're looking for their first youth sport, kind of some of the things we have to offer here and kind of who the big hitters are here in this community. I also then gonna, like Greg said, get into the agreements and how we've identified some of our primary partners that we utilize for some of our bigger sports, and then just talk a little bit more in depth about the agreements and some of the different standards and report cards we've used over the years. So when you are looking for that first youth sport for Susie or Billy, and they're around 4 years old, you'll find a whole host of options in Canton and our, surrounding communities. It can be very overwhelming, very confusing, and parents are calling all over town trying to figure things out. So these are just some of the big hitters, as I said here, some of the big players as far as what we offer in this area. There's a whole slew of other options at, different churches and preschools and some of the other opportunities in the area, but this is just kind of some of the big ones. So obviously leisure services and our partnerships that I'll get in depth as we go along. High velocity sports, I'm sure most of you are familiar with on Michigan Avenue at Victory Park with Arctic Edge and the Canton Sports Center. Then we have the Plymouth Canton Schools and their community education program. The local churches, the charter schools, they offer regular seasons for several sports. And then just a lot of the travel and rec clubs in the area. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Plymouth Canton Steelers, Little League, the Patriots, Hurricanes, and Cruisers. There's some of the other clubs. And then, like I said, there's probably another 20 behind them. So we work with all these groups. Again, also not listed here that we do a lot with is all of our Special Olympics programs. We do offer, they offer seasons for different sports. And then they also offer their state games, which is their big end of season tournament over at Independence Park and at the Canton Sports Center. So there's a lot of options for all the families in town. And, it can be anything from a 3-week season or a full season of 14 games. And then, of course, I'm sure many of you know about the travel clubs, and they offer, seasons now that run up 6-8 months out of the year. So there is a wide variety. And I want to get more into what we do in leisure services. Thanks, Greg.
Sorry.
No, it's good. So this is a little look of what we either do in-house, meaning we register all the participants, we find the instructors, we put these programs at several of our parks, some of our local schools. The rookie baseball is one of our smaller classes, and we try to broad brush. It could be a class again, or it could be a one-day event. Or it can be a full 7 to 8 week league. So there's kind of a mix out there, depending on what the families are looking for. So Canton Lacrosse is what we're actually running right now in the snow, but it's a spring lacrosse program we're pretty proud of that has been running about 20 years now. And that is a boys lacrosse program that runs for 2nd to 8th grade. And that kind of started, like I said, 20 years ago, really out of families asking. The schools at that point did not offer that program. And so we kind of filled a niche there, and we do have families that are from, Plymouth Canton schools and surrounding communities. And then we play other communities like Heartland, Ann Arbor, kind of maybe in a 15-20 mile radius around town. Another long-standing partnership we've had is with, and many of you may have heard of the Michigan Youth Flag Football Program. We were kind of proud that we were one of the first communities to take on that program. And I believe, I don't know the exact number, but they're probably up to 30 to 40 communities in Michigan, and they've expanded now in the Midwest and even in the South. And so that program really started as an option for maybe players that were younger that didn't want to jump right into tackle football, and they took the option of flag football. And the idea also was to set that up where maybe you could play with friends from school and compete against other friends that are from the other schools. It's kind of the middle school model right now in some of the basketball, volleyball, and it just runs from kindergarten to 8th grade. And so that's been pretty exciting. And then they just kind of kept growing. So they started off as a kind of a fall program to kind of match, again, during the tackle season, just another option. And they expanded to the spring and winter seasons. So they do the winter season at High Velocity, the spring at the high schools, and they do the fall season at the Canton Sports Center. So they're pretty much all over town. And then the other one on that list, which is kind of a big highlight right now, we're switching into a new tennis direction. We have a new tennis director. His name is Eric Sturgis. He's the coach over at Skyline High School in Ann Arbor. And we just had this past Sunday our first free tennis day in the community. And it was nice. We had about 40 participants, all ages again, from seriously 3 years old to older adult. And so really Eric is helping us kind of relaunch a successful tennis program we've had, again, for 20, 30 years, but we're just trying to, again, reach all ages. In addition to the lesson program, try to offer some camps, which we have done, and offer maybe some leagues and some other things, and just kind of revisit that program and relaunch it. And that's held at Griffin Park and Floden Park. The other one on the list, I mean, people are familiar with some of the junior academies at Pheasant Run, and then the MLB Pitch Hit and Run. That's pretty exciting. We do that at the Sports Center or Heritage Park, and then kids that get to the finals we've had. I mean, I still always remember Dante Toppy was one of our highlight players in Canton, who was able to go down to the All-Star game in Detroit and represent Canton. So that was pretty cool. And then our kids cricket program is another new one that's launched. We've had cricket rolling for several years in Canton. We have the Michigan Cricket Association that plays regularly at Heritage Park. And we also have the Ford Cricket League at the Sports Center. But kind of new to our area is this kids crick idea. And that's really then, again, focusing on that young age and getting them introduced with a lot of that kind of age appropriate cricket balls and the paddles and all the equipment is really done at a kind of fun start level for that age group. So we just launched that right before the COVID. So we're hoping to get that reestablished. So now diving into more of our partnerships with the youth sports groups. So basically in 2001, we established a significant relationship with 4 of our primary groups. And you'll learn a little bit more about them as we go forward. But I remind myself, like, wow, these groups have been here since 1960s. It's just such a long and rich tradition with some of these youth sports groups. And basically we formed these partnerships to really support them in their mission, which is, most of them are nonprofit, family first focused. They're experts in their sports. And it just really became, very clear that we can support and do a hybrid service level so that we make sure that they're doing things at a very safe level. They're meeting, safety standards, utilizing our facilities in a safe way, and then meeting all the financial standards so that families know that when they come to Canton and they join one of these groups, that Canton Township has really, supported it. We've filtered it. We work directly with them to make sure that their service level is really the best, around. So that's kind of was originally why we formed these, partnerships. And then over the years, I mean, these groups have just progressed, and we'll, like I said, get a little more in depth with them as we go through each slide. But they really kind of just drive the mission of really meeting all the needs of the kids in our community. So here's kind of the nooks and crannies of the agreements. And each youth sport group is a little different. You'll see, football is going to have a different need than baseball, which is a different need than soccer and hockey. But they all kind of have some of the main basics that we want to make sure are in each agreement. It describes, what kind of facility use they're going to use, how we're going to make sure that we meet the service level needs. Obviously, if it's cutting grass or, different things we need to do. So we support them with all of their games, their practices, their meetings. And then obviously we try to promote them in the community, make sure that they're reaching all the mechanisms, whether it's the social networking, and just help them get the word out, make sure kids are getting access and being informed about how to participate. And then the groups have really evolved, like I said, on the state safety standards, obviously with football and concussions. They go to, intensive trainings and meetings and get certifications to make sure they're all up to speed. The soccer coaches, they have licenses for all of their different levels. And really all of these groups have also established pretty significant referee and officiating programs as well. And then part of the township's role, again, each one's a little bit of a different role, but we do have oversight, and we do require them to submit documents that do show all their financial records, have their insurance current and up to speed, and we review tax returns. Again, just to make sure, I don't know how many of you have been in the community, how long, but there's been some bumps in the road in years past, just about making sure that all the money is handled, professionally and It's not, cash at fields or anything like that. It's just a lot more streamlined, and we just support their efforts. Of course, all of these groups utilize, professional services when it comes to accounting and insurance groups, and we just help kind of with that oversight. I talked a little bit about background or safety standards. Well, the background checks have been in place for probably 15 years now. And so we work with the groups to make sure all the coaches get certified, they get trained on their specific sports. And again, like in soccer, if you're familiar with that, they work directly through the Michigan Youth Soccer Association. There's USA Hockey. So most of these groups do have national level governing bodies that they work through for their standards. And we just, again, assure making sure that they stay on top of that. The other thing with every, volunteer board, there's always, years where you feel like you have 25 volunteers and then all of a sudden you're looking around and where is someone to help? So the succession plan was part of the agreement just to make sure that all these groups do set up their articles of incorporation and their board of directors to make sure that there's no chance that they'll be leaving us with all these groups alone. So we just want to make sure that they have their board members staggered and that they're ready to go each year. And so far, so good. I've been around for a few years here. So also we have a voting board spot on each of these groups. And whether it's myself or Abe, we regularly attend the meetings and we have an ability to participate in their voting, and really it's a daily conversation that we have with most of their board members. So regular communication. This just gives you a quick look again who we're talking about. So what we're talking about is the Canton Victory Hockey Association, and their headquarters is at Arctic Edge. And you can see they run about 250 players. And again, this is on the league level and the Learn to Play. So Learn to Play, they started like a juice box hockey a few years ago, which kind of took off, which is for anyone that just wants to come out and learn to skate and get out there. Of course, when my son did that, all he wanted to do was shoot a puck, but that's how they start out, just learning to skate. And then they move to house and travel, just depending what their level of interest is. The Canton Lions football and cheer club, their headquarters, their practice location is at Heritage Park. So you'll see them kind of take shape there in July, and they're getting all excited and ready, and you'll hear the cheerleaders going strong, and they get ready for their season, which kicks off in September. And then Greater Canton Youth Baseball and Softball, they run right around 2,000 players per season. And then the Canton Soccer Club, which runs also around 2,000 players per season. So that's just a quick look. Now we'll just jump in a little bit more on each of those. So Victory Hockey, again, I don't know if many of you know Nick Renzi, but he's been the president probably for at least 10 or 15 years. We have been lucky with Canton Victory Hockey. They've had a lot of sustainability in their board members, and they really work hard to deliver this program. And as you know, I mean, hockey, all these programs kind of ebb and flow, but hockey seems to be the one for different reasons that, you do get some highs and lows in numbers. But they're continuing to work hard. And like I said, I talked to Craig O'Neill, the rink manager, this week, and, he just had nothing but praise to say about the group that works with him over there. And they're constantly just trying to keep the energy going. And he assured me that hockey is still moving along, even though they just had tryouts this week for their spring tryouts. And, they're still seeing some decent numbers, and they reopened their, public skating. So, we're all, not because it's snowing today, but they do believe that hockey will survive and be back strong this fall. As far as our Lions football and cheer, like I said, I couldn't even believe when I typed that they've been around since 1964. They actually have had better seasons than our Detroit Lions, so I can report they're representing Canton very well. A lot of energy, as you know, if you've been a football or cheer mom or dad, it's so intense during their season. And so even though they may not have the 2,000 players that some of the other groups do, they are so part of this community. They've been involved in many of our special events over the years, and they're always a phone call away if we need them to help out in Canton at all. They're a very energized group of families, and they're very focused on safety and fun for the kids. So, I mean, it's a good it's a great program, and the families involved in that program have been super, just super proud of them to, you know, represent Canton. So Greater Canton Youth Baseball and Softball,
Stay.
wherever you want. There we go.
It doesn't want to stay.
That's a trick. I'm good. Just want me to go?
All right, we're just gonna talk about both of them.
Okay,
on
let's
one
talk
slide.
about both of them. Well, they're both kind of our bigger programs, and they're both kind of the programs that we do most day-to-day operations, you know, with. So the soccer club, that seems to be the one that's up there. They've been out here since the 70s, and again, many of you know that their headquarters is really Independence Park over at Denton between Michigan and Cherry Hill. And there's 26 fields over there. So that is their primary location for games, but then they are also spread all over the community, whether it's Heritage, Griffin, school fields, they're kind of all over. They have grown, as you can see, to 140 coaches, club directors, club managers, technical directors. Soccer is, you know, is kind of a serious sport. We know it's pretty intense, but they start off with their little kickers and their kickstart program, and they make it just really fun. They do like a 30-minute practice, and those kids at 5, 6 years old just get a little scrimmage in, and they do offer everything from just that beginner fun, get out with friends, all the way up to, you know, those kids that are trying to make a high school team or play in college. So there's really a variety in there. Their name has taken different names in the last few years. They've formed a strong partnership with the Detroit Football Club, how do you say it? And so you've seen their name, DCFC, you've seen Canton Celtic, and really it's the same organization, just again, kind of spreading that option of what's available for the kids in the community. One of the nice things I noticed that they do is, we've read these over the years, is they do promote that scholarship program for the high school seniors. So again, focused on academics. We've hosted many of their college nights over at the theater or at the summit. And so they really do focus on the student athlete. And we've had a ton of students from the soccer club, you know, just be very successful as students in college. So that's kind of cool. As far as their annual contribution, they do about $20,000. They will contribute each year just to kind of offset all of the kind of maintenance and support and the level of service that the township does provide. You can see that they also have done several capital improvements over the years. I put just a couple of the current ones that came to mind most recently, but they did a big field improvement and storage building improvement at Indy. That was around $150,000, and they did the irrigation of irrigating the practice side of Independence Park. So again, it's always kind of working together and seeing what makes sense in spending the dollars and spending the resources at the different parks. Okay. Oh, I do want to mention about the soccer club. They do provide all the nets, all the goals, and they do all the lines at all the parks. So whether they're using that particular park for 2 games, 20 games, 200 games, they are the ones that set up all of that equipment. And also, obviously, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the Canton Cup, which truly is one of the largest and best soccer tournaments over the years. I think not just in the Midwest, but really nationally, it is known. And the group, the tournament directors for the Cup over the years have been some of the best tournament directors I've ever seen just run an event. And over the years, they've drawn up to around 600 teams. That's not what's on slate for this year. We are kind of keeping it down to, I think, around half that, right?
Under 300.
Yeah, under 300 this year, just to manage it and, you know, kind of keep things safer. But they do have the potential, and they have over the years run an event upwards of 600 teams. Okay.
It won't let me stay on the GCYBSA slide, so if you can just do
Oh,
that
okay.
from your.
So last but not least, the Greater Canton Youth Baseball and Softball Organization is one that we did decide in 2001 to kind of have even a little bit of a deeper role, in that the township has a fiduciary role with that particular group. They basically need, that was kind of like some groups need more marketing, some groups need more facilities. This group needed just extra support on the fiduciary end. So we do help kind of process their POs. They have their own liability account. So they have, you know, their own board and they do all of their own voting for how that money is going to get spent. But we do help and support the process of them getting that done. Again, GCY is pretty large program in that it is reaching around 2,000 players per year from T-ball to travel. And the most unique thing I would say about GCY is that when that organization was born, it was born under the premise that Canton Township, Plymouth Township, and the Plymouth Canton schools would all choose this group as their primary source for baseball and softball. And so at that time, it was, you could have 100 people calling the schools in Plymouth Township and Canton Township, all for the same fields, all asking a million questions. And then out at the fields, there'd be people fighting everywhere about who belongs and permitting and all that. And so in the fact that we formed one organized group to manage the 40 fields plus, 12 additional practice fields. So you're talking over 50 fields. So basically as a one unit board, Plymouth Township, Canton Township, and the schools decided to let's run this fleet together. So that's probably pretty unique for that group. They contribute around $10,000 per year. And then they've done numerous capital improvements at Griffin. Probably the biggest highlight that you saw last year was the new field 4 at Heritage Park. So that's a smaller field for the younger ages, 200-foot fences. And you probably saw that that was a brand new field and it looks awesome. The other thing that GCY has done is if you're around at Plymouth Township Park or Heritage Park, they have a therapeutic rec concession program. So young adults in our community that are special needs or in the therapeutic rec program will actually work the concessions and just get a great experience and that life skill of taking money and running a concession stand. And so that's been an awesome addition to both of those sites. We good? All right, so last but not least, sometimes youth sports or sports in general might get a little bit of a rap out there. Some of the headlines aren't so pretty if you see fights at a hockey rink or something going on at a baseball field. So basically in 2005, the Youth Sports Alliance and the Citizenship Through Sports Alliance set up like a report card. And I guess I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned this, just that our groups do regularly talk about how do we make sure that, of course, we don't want any negative press or experience for any of our families. And for the most part, I mean, it's been a real positive experience for the families that we've come in contact with. But we always do try to make sure that we stay on top of talking to the leaders and making sure that, they're focused on the philosophies and strategies to do, safe developmental programs, that they do stay on top of coaching and the health and safety and just put those pieces in place. And we just really want smiles and we want people to choose to stay active through their entire life and not to leave a sport. So, we just talk a lot about the confidence and the friends and the social time and all those benefits. And, all of us in this room, I think we've talked more hours than ever just about what this last year has brought. And if we did not have activity for our kids, what that would mean to them. So it does not have to be a league or a travel or a tournament, but to not have activity in sports, we've seen this, how they kind of wither up and don't have that, that kind of, zest for life. So we really feel like youth sports in our community has delivered on bringing these kids success and happiness. So any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Kate?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation, Anne Marie. I was wondering, you had mentioned the Special Olympics and the GCY concessions program for the therapeutic recreation volunteers. I'm wondering if there are other opportunities for children with special needs, and if so, what are they?
Want to help me with this one, John?
Yeah, so I mean, we do offer a therapeutic recreation program, which creates additional social opportunities. So, much beyond sports.
Right, I'm specifically asking about this youth sports participation.
Right, I know so we've worked with the Miracle League program in Plymouth. And so we will often filter some of our volunteers. Like I said, our state fall games that we host, we have, they do softball, soccer, and I think they added with ultimate frisbee and golf. But those 4 sports are state games that Special Olympics out of Mount Pleasant runs in Canton. And those are huge events, like hundreds of players that come from all over the state. So people can get involved with that event.
Right, but I was asking about
Players?
opportunities for Canton children with special needs. Not other than, I know you mentioned Special Olympics and you just did, but I meant what other opportunities are there besides Special Olympics and therapeutic recreation?
To work or play?
To play.
To play. Well, I mean, there's a whole slew of the different programs in TR, right? Which I don't have those. And then we have like say we have a small ball program in our GCY BSA. So we've had all players of all developmental levels participate in all of those programs, but they're not like labeled as a special different program. They're just within like small ball, for example. It's just included.
I want to make sure that our programs are inclusive. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I also was wondering on the slide 4, the one with the Canton Leisure Services and Partnerships slide, and then also slide 7, I think it was the youth sports groups with township agreements. For some of those, you have, wait till you get to them.
Which one are you looking for?
I think it's this one.
This one?
That one in particular, and then yeah, we'll start with this one. So like for the Greater Canton Youth Baseball and Softball Association, you have it divided out by recreational girls and travel girls, and then recreational boys and travel boys. Do you have similar information for the Canton Soccer Club? And then also for the Canton Lions and Cheer, is the football only for boys and cheer only for girls, or do either sex get to participate in either of those?
I would say that males or females can participate in either of those. I mean, they don't do like, what would you call that? Where, where you throw them, where they do low level cheer, like more sideline cheer versus competitive cheer. But males or females are open to either of the programs. Yes, I can get in more in depth. I probably just had the Greater Canton at my fingertips. But the football is kind of like they have junior, freshman, junior varsity, varsity. So there's 4 levels in football. Same for cheer. They would cheer for each of those age groups.
Okay, but they're open to either sex?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and is hockey open to either sex, or is that all boys?
Well, I know there's a strong girls hockey program. I'm sure they're open. But I know that there is, I could be sure, like if you wanted to know how many participated in the last year, if there were girls in some of the boys programs or vice versa, but they're on all of their like paperwork and their websites and all of their articles in incorporation, it does talk about inclusiveness and, non-discrimination.
Yeah, girls hockey is very popular.
Yeah,
there's teams that are all girls.
It's actually co-ed. My son played with girls probably until 7th, 8th grade, and then they split off on their own teams. That doesn't mean they didn't allow girls, but we did have one girl that played that late, but she ended up moving over to the girls just because the competitiveness changes.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of the sports do. They start out co-ed and then later. become single sex. Okay, I was just curious about those. Thank you.
Are we talking about, was this the other slide you were looking at?
Yeah, I was just wondering about that as far as opportunities for both sexes and then also the students with, or children with special needs.
All of these programs would be inclusive of gender and abilities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Just go ahead and speak up if I can't see you.
If not, we do have Liberty Fest as well to talk with, just real quick.
Okay, so on this one, so Greg, so next week you'll put an RBA together for some of these contracts, and that's why you presented this so the board would understand that.
So for the 4 partner groups for hockey, football, soccer, and the GCY BSA, we'll have those 4 agreements in one RBA.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for that presentation, Anne Marie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So then we can transition if you like. I'll have John touch on Liberty Fest and our recommendation, and then we can have a discussion about that.
Yeah, so this has been the golden question, I think, for everybody for a while. And, you know, we really were buying time to make the best decision and recommendation that we could. Like everyone, we've been following along with the executive orders, epidemic orders. And with this last one, I think we all kind of knew the direction it was heading. But as we know, the current orders do limit us to an overall gathering of 1,000 people in an outdoor gathering, among some other restrictions. So as we looked at this and worked with some of our vendors, including the Carnival Company, could we offer something? Yes, we could. We could do, you know, fenced in areas and count numbers, you know, by 1,000. We could have a carnival area, we could have a concert area. But the more we thought about it, and with Heritage Park being such a community draw, as well as the festival, you know, the fear is that we would end up becoming more exclusive than inclusive as far as the community goes. And with the current numbers in our area and the trends that are happening, we just felt like it was kind of the responsible thing to do to kind of look at this from a holistic approach. Really, right, the Liberty Festival is about bringing the community together, and that's a really hard thing to do right now. So as we went along, you know, we kind of had this window of planning that we tried to keep open as long as we could. Typically, a lot of our contracts and vendors and things are in place by the first of the year prior to the festival. So back in January, we would have had a lot of things lined up. Because we canceled last year, we had a lot of people in limbo and have already kind of had to allow some things to go, some reservations, some tents, tables, chairs, you know, things like that. But we're really at a point now where it's only fair to those who are still kind of hanging on, as well as our community at large, for the most part, really the community, is to really make a decision as a community, as a township, what we want to do with the 2021 Liberty Festival. So after a lot of consideration and discussion, as you can imagine, really the recommendation we're making based on all of those factors is to cancel this year's festival. Begrudgingly, it's obviously been many years in the making, you know, coming up on 30 years, and we look forward to continuing the traditions that we have here. But really what we want to do is we still have fireworks that are available to us. So we'll have that as a potential opportunity later this year to possibly host something in the fall. And we really hope we're in a place where we can host a community celebration by then. And so we will continue to monitor the trends in the area and the safety of everybody and see if we can put something together. In the meantime, we're prepared to still offer things for the community, right? Summer's still coming and so many of us are ready to get outside and get going. We've decided already to expand the Thursday night concert series. Typically we offer about 7 of those. And so this year we're going to increase that to 10 concerts, and we're going to start with the Thursday that would be the Liberty Festival. So we want to provide opportunities for the community, not just the concert series, but we have so many other things planned, as some of you well know. The farmers markets are about to launch. We'll have a number of programs and events that will be held throughout the summer that will allow us to provide safe distancing for everybody, and just like we have with so many of our events leading up to this point. So really, we just wanted to come to you as a board tonight and kind of share where we're at with it, see if you had any feedback, questions, concerns, as we kind of roll this out and communicate with our folks. We wanted to make sure that we were all kind of on the same page, and that we had gone through this and analyzed all of our different options. And so with that, I'll just kind of open it up for questions or discussion.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. I know this has been a tough year. I understand. My one question would be for the summer concerts, because you're right. People are ready to get outside with their families. How are you going to be able to social distance? Are you going to be making squares on the lawn, or have you thought how you're going to do that?
That's a great question, and I meant to elaborate on a little bit. The staff have been working very hard to come up with ways to do that, and we've had great success, as you know, with some of our holiday traditional events, with kind of offering pre-registration and kind of controlling our numbers. Now, we don't want to do that for concerts because we feel sometimes it's a little bit, we want to make sure that we're giving equitable opportunities for everyone. But for the Thursday night concerts, as we started a couple of years ago offering a beverage tent, we kind of worked with the fenced-in area. And so the goal is to kind of expand that fenced-in area, make it the entire amphitheater, area there and surrounding, and have control points. We'll have staff at each of the three entry points, and we'll take up to 500 individuals for each of those concerts. Okay. It'll be kind of a first come, first serve, but that number is higher than our average has been in the past. So we feel pretty good about that number. It will allow for safe distancing. Of course, we'll do a lot of our signage, and we'll be supervising the area, but this will allow us to kind of count the number of people coming in and be able to control that. So we feel really good about that. We'll monitor those numbers too with spacing and see what that allows. And we can always expand the fence in the area if we need to. So those are kind of some of the measures that we are planning, at least for, to start.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Tanya?
I think Stephen had his hand up before. Go ahead, Stephen.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know I did. But thank you, Tanya. No, I was just going to say it's unfortunate that we have to do this again, but it seems like the right thing to do at this time. And I'd be interested, is there thought as to what possibly we could do in the fall? Something scaled down, not as big?
Yeah, of course, whatever orders are in place will kind of help us determine that. But like I said, we have fireworks kind of on hand waiting to work with us on that. Our staff are phenomenal at, whatever we kind of feel like at that point we can do. Anything with music and food is very easy for our staff to do and pull together, without a whole lot of notice. I thought about piggybacking on some of our other events or programs that we might have, or trying to align ourselves with another, different holiday in one of the months, or align ourselves with one of the different cultural events. So there's different opportunities, and we certainly want to make the most of it when we can, and just kind of trying to do so in a way that is safe for everyone and create, another memory. Maybe start a new tradition. Who knows? Maybe we'll start something new in the community that we didn't realize we were missing out on.
But a carnival would not be part of that.
Not a carnival. Gotcha. Well, but thanks for making the tough decisions. I know it's hard to do.
Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because, we look forward to it every year, and it's like we mark our calendars for it. So, but I think it's a good decision. As you said something about the cultural, doing something with a different cultural event. Diwali is in October. You can do the fireworks at that time. Just thinking out loud here. I had a different question as along the lines of what Diane was asking. So, you're opening you're renting out the amphitheater to different organizations and probably there is some sort of gatherings happening. Is there some sort of enforcement that like somebody is looking into if people are masked or not, or like is it just something that they have to self impose on themselves, or is Canton keeping an eye on that? I was just wondering about that.
Yes, no, that's a great question. Absolutely. As you can imagine, the demand for those spaces has never been greater. And we do have a number of reservations we did last year, and this year has been no different. But yes, we have through the application process, there are some guidelines communicated. They are, we are communicating for them up front about what the expectation is. We do have staff that are on throughout, the course of the nights and weekends during those events who are around the park and kind of watching, and we'll check on them, especially if it's a larger event. So we are adhering to all of the capacity limits and ensuring that those are met. So just working with the different groups, they have to file an application, explain to us what the event's going to entail, how many people they expect. Based on numbers, we then kind of get into parking plans and traffic plans and enforcement stuff. So it's definitely part of there's a lot of questions that go along with the process.
Okay.
And we are upfront about the limits that are in place. So we do our best. People have been very good about it. I will say it's been a pretty good process for us throughout the pandemic.
Okay, and I'm assuming there won't be the beers bratwurst festival either, or that
They actually are planning. The B4 event has been set for September, the Saturday after Labor Day.
Okay, that's wonderful. So we don't
They're
have to come
planning.
in.
They'll likely have, their numbers will probably be affected as well, of how many, they can allow in based on the space, but it's being planned. So they're trying to move forward with that.
It's not till September, so we're hopeful that by then, all these masks will be gone and pandemic will be in the river here. We said that last year about Liberty Fest, so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Kate?
Hi, thank you. I totally get the concerns and agree with the recommendation. I'm wondering if there's been any thought considered to just having the fireworks the weekend that we would normally have Liberty Fest. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but I know that there are a lot of communities that have fireworks without a big festival attached. So just wondering about that.
Yeah, there's definitely something that was discussed. I think part of the challenge, is drawing, typically because of the viewing area and where we would launch the fireworks from, you would really have to be within a mile of that. So I think the fear, the thought process is that having 20,000 people drawn to Heritage Park and from a gathering standpoint and viewing, would we truly be able to have people appropriately social distance, and would we be facilitating a situation that, God forbid, would turn into a super spreader event or something like that? So I think just from a safety and from a caring approach, I think it was kind of thought it might be better to kind of defer a little bit and push that out.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I was just curious. I don't actually usually go to the fireworks because I can see them from my house, but I know if you try to go anywhere that evening, you'll see people like over, in various parking lots around, but not necessarily at Heritage Park. So I wasn't sure how many actually went to the park, because I know a lot of people don't want to get stuck there in the big traffic jam that is leaving. So.
Yeah,
you can't hardly move in the park that night. It's so crowded. So I think if we did fireworks, it would be uncontrolled. We would have no control over the crowds that would show up.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So I was just curious and glad to have a better understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of the travesties really for all of us, because so many, I think Tanya mentioned it, so many of us plan our calendars around it. People host backyard parties in the area, as I'm sure your subdivision probably does. So I know it's a huge
It's,
disappointment.
it's a very popular weekend or night for graduation parties in my sub because of the fireworks.
I think that's probably why we're getting so many questions, because so many are trying to plan their parties and they want to know, you know, for their hours of their party, if there'll be fireworks. So, yeah, it's not an easy decision, and I hate that we're here, and I hate that we're having to discuss it, but we all know that's where we're at with things. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. I know, thank you very much for the presentations. I mean, personally, I can just say for the programs we talked about, I mean, all 4 of my kids have participated in some of the sports programs, and so I really appreciate them. And also, we know, like for the program, like the Liberty Fest, we know Livonia Spree has announced their cancellation. I know that many parades have delayed. So it is sad that we have to go through this again this year, but hey, maybe we'll have a big parade to open it all up next year. If you go into Applebee's, I was telling Greg this earlier, on to get takeout, they have a mural of the old Canton parade. And so
that's very cool. Yeah. The photos in there are phenomenal.
Oh boy. But so now you have to inform the Rotarians and everybody, because I know they've been asking, because they have their tents and things like that. But hopefully they'll still be there in the fall, you know, to be there with us.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next presentation is the ad of giving a presentation on the rental inspection process by Director Jade.
Good evening. If we could promote Rob Kramer, I see that he's in as a participant in case there's any questions for him. And I know Kristen Kolb is also waiting in the wings. I know we're going to go and talk about this more in depth from a different perspective a little bit. But I thought what I would do is just go through a quick presentation on the history of the program and then where we are to date with some of the numbers, and show you some examples of what we find actually in the field for you to take a look at. So I'll share my screen here. Okay. So I just reiterated the ordinance and the purpose for the, and I will let you know that this is a 50-some page slide, or presentation, but I am not going to go through all 50 slides. I did just email this to everybody. There's a lot of pictures in it that show you some of the things that we find in the field that you may find interesting, that you can peruse at your own leisure. I'm only going to go through the first 10 slides. But I did want to emphasize the purpose of the ordinance that was developed in 2014. And really it boils down to the safety of our residents and the safety of our community. You can see here that we put together some statistics, and can you guys see the whole screen? Because I've got a bar at the bottom of mine.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have a total of 7,934 rental units within the entire township. 6,535 of those are actually multifamily, and 1,399 are single family. And then below that, you can see the ones that we have that are in compliant, not compliant, and actually at this point unknown. So we have 1,430 that are in compliance, 5,056 that are not in compliant. And actually the unknown, I think I have this broken down again in another slide that I'll go through in a minute. And you can see too, on the right-hand side, we went through the history of the permits that were issued on an annual basis going back to 2017. I can't speak to what happened prior to that. So the next two slides actually show all of our multi-unit complexes throughout the township with their address, the number of units they have that are in compliance, and then if there's any sort of notes or comments. I will say that some of this may seem, we may have more detail on some of this if there's some questions. I was planning on this presentation being done next Tuesday and it got moved up to tonight. So it's a little bit, there may be some detail that you may have some questions on that I may not have this evening. But this is a good rundown of where we're at with each of the complexes within the township. and where they're at in compliance. There's 2 pages of these complexes, but they both show the same data for all of the complexes across the township. This does not include the single family homes. This is just the apartment complexes that are multi-unit, multi-family. These are some of the inspections I just wanted to go through to date. In 2020, we did not supply 2020's data because of COVID and because of the pandemic. We did things a little bit differently last year. Obviously, when the pandemic kicked off, we weren't doing anything because everything was shut down. And then we decided towards the end of the season to go ahead and just do exterior inspections only, not the interior inspections. So the 2020 data is skewed and probably will be for forever, no matter what we talk about. So I'm going to go back and just use 2019's numbers. But the top portion of this screen shows you year to date, or sorry, program to date of total inspections that have been done and number of re-inspections that have been done as well. And then you can see the same data broken down for the year 2019 below. There's been some questions about the process of how this occurs. And the first piece of this process, and I'm not going to read this verbatim, but is for the owner to actually register the property and pay $100 to the township to register their property, which actually then starts a whole series of events to bring them into compliance and to issue them a compliance certification. If they fail to register, there's a process that we go through of notifying them 3 times, and then before they get a notice of violation. And actually that notice of violation goes to go to the extreme. If they did not comply, or if we continued to see non-compliance, we can actually tag the unit for no use or occupancy. Once the home has been registered, they will receive a compliance permit, and that is through the inspection process. So they have 30 days to schedule the inspection, to have one of our inspectors come out there and look at the unit, both inside and outside. And once they complete that, the inspector is out there and he completes the inspection, gives the information back to the building department for processing, for them to then actually create an invoice and send to the landowner or homeowner. If the inspection fails, they have 60 days from the failed inspection to actually go ahead and make any sort of improvements and to apply for a re-inspection. And that is done within the 60 days. And of course, then the process is very similar for each step along the way. They have 10 days to comply, and then we send out notifications. And if they're not in compliance, then we actually do give a notice of violation for no occupancy. Once they have passed the inspection, they actually will receive the certificate of compliance, and that's good for 2 years. Then through our process, it's put into the system with a date to actually trigger when their next communication will be, which is 30 days prior to their expiration date, 2 years from now. So when that happens, they're sent this letter and they get this notice of expiring certificate, which means then they have to go ahead and schedule their next inspection. This happens every 2 years, and upon 2 successful in-person inspections, if the property is in good standing and has a current certificate of compliance, the owner can complete a self-reporting certification to actually be approved for the next cycle, which would alleviate one of our inspectors having to go out to the site and actually doing the on-site inspection. And then, so that's basically the process, and then the process continues every 2 years. And we do 50% of the rentals. Well, the plan is to do 50% of the rentals 1 year or 1 cycle and 50% the next cycle. But the rental program is always moving forward. So on an annual basis, we're always inspecting, but each unit is on a 2-year cycle. And if they're in a multi-unit building, it's 50% 1 cycle and 50% the next cycle. I did want to illustrate some of the findings that we see when we're out. And these following pictures are actually all from various locations within Canton since the program has started. One of the common issues that we do find during our rental inspections are missing or non-working smoke alarms or carbon monoxide alarms. A lot of finished basements or living areas that are constructed in the basements without proper egress, which of course, when you also finish a basement, that also brings along with it electrical and plumbing issues as well. We see a lot of deteriorated stairs and concrete repairs on the outsides of units. You can see some improper electrical issues that have been found in the lower right-hand corner. Concrete shifting and lifting, which creates dangerous trip hazards. Ceiling leaks, which can also, if they go unattended, can create additional damage up to and including mold. And then, as I said, I'm not going to continue to go through all of these, but you can see there's some bent and kinked gas lines, some improper gas fireplace venting into an attic, but there's no proper ventilation that goes through the roof. So these are all things that we're finding in the rental units through the rental program in Canton Township. And I just wanted to give you a brief overview and then obviously open it up for questions. But I thought it was important to kind of go through the process and then show you some of the current statistics as far as who's in compliance and who's not. So with that, like I said, I did email this out to everybody. And if you have further questions, please get a hold of myself or Rob Kramer, and we can go ahead and answer those questions on a one-on-one basis, or if you send them via email, I can send the answers back out to the entire board.
Okay, great.
Bit of an overview for that.
Are there any questions? Tanya?
Yeah, so Jade, as I understand, the biggest reason that a lot of non-compliance this year is because you couldn't send inspectors last year, or is that the reason? Because we saw like more than 60%, I think, is non-compliant, right? That's, or am I?
Right, but I wouldn't, that may be non-compliant in the system, but if they were on the cycle last year, although they're non-compliant, we're not out penalizing, give people notice of violations. We're starting that process over. And one of the things that Rob and I worked on at the kind of towards the middle of the summer last year was that how do we continue to keep people in compliance? And that's when we converted to just doing the exterior inspections, which would have kept them in compliance.
Okay.
So we attempted to keep the program going. And Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember my dates, but I want to say it was like June or July when we implemented just doing the exterior inspections. So we only lost a couple of months.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, sorry.
Hi, Jade. So I had sent some questions by email, but I do have another question. When a property has gone through the 2 cycles and is in compliance, and then they can have the owner do that checklist or whatever it is to be in compliance, then is that just for 1 cycle, or how long is it until they're re-inspected?
Yeah, just for 1 cycle. So a lot of this is to get landlords in the practice of staying up with building codes and staying up with our current ordinance. So if we've gone through 2 cycles in a multi-unit facility and we've done through 50% of those units, it's very likely that that owner is going to stay in compliance moving forward. So that's where we give them that 2 years. And then after that, then they go back into a regular cycle for the next 2 cycles to be inspected in person.
Okay, so then if a certificate of compliance is expired, not due to the township, but say an owner is refusing inspections or something like that, then should the dwellings be able to be rented at that point if they don't have that compliance?
Technically, per the ordinance, they should not be occupied. And
Okay.
Rob, I'll have to ask you if we've ever actually had to have somebody vacate a unit. I don't, since my time here, I don't recall that that's happened. But per the ordinance, that is what should be happening. But we really do try and work with all of our landlords and owners to make sure that we work with them to stay, even if they're out of compliance, how do we get them back into compliance?
Right. Well, it's, you know, it's to the benefit of the renters and the tenants, and also to the property owner to keep those,
Absolutely.
to keep
Absolutely.
keep it maintained. So then I understand there's a rental registry that that we have that has information pertaining to the different properties, like, you know, who's the owner, who's the agent in charge, things like that. Are we able to make that information public, or is it public already?
I don't think that it's public. If somebody wanted to call and get because we do have the ordinance, and Kristen, you may want to weigh in on this, but I think if somebody wanted to call the building department and do an inquiry on how it is to rent from a particular landlord, I don't know that we wouldn't be able to hold that back, because they could absolutely FOIA that information if they were in compliance or not. And I don't know that from a service standpoint that I would require somebody to do a FOIA. I would, if they were looking to rent from one of our landlords in the township, we would probably offer that information up.
Yeah, I think that having a means for the public to know this information might be of interest. I know when I started looking into our program, I went on Ann Arbor's website and was actually able to find the certificate of compliance for my daughter's apartment in Ann Arbor. And they have it right in with their permit tracking.
Yeah, and I don't know, Kristen, I don't think we'd have any issues if we wanted to create that. We did a lot of data searching to create this short presentation tonight, so I think we've got a pretty good handle on what we have currently, and we probably could produce something like that. I see Rob has a comment. Maybe he's got an answer that.
Yeah, it might be available through CityView, which does have a public portal.
Yeah. Okay. So Rob, you're muted, Rob. Is that the case? Okay. He's having some technical difficulties.
There we go. Yeah,
okay.
They can look that up the same way that they can a permit, that you can look up a permit for your house. You can punch in the address and you can see the report, you can see the lists, everything's pretty well available. The forms aren't available, but the inspectors keep good notes on the CityView portal.
Okay, so if a potential renter was interested in renting somewhere in Canton, they could look that up.
Yeah, they would have to register into the portal like everybody else does first, and then just punch in the address and all that information will come up.
Okay, so in Ann Arbor, you don't actually have to register. You can do it without registering. But that's good information to know, because I think that you know, when you're looking for a place, you want to know that it's being maintained. So
we just started having people to register. There was an IT issue that came up, so they have to register now, but they never used to.
Okay. All right. Well, I am glad to know that information. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Well, thank you for pulling the information together so quickly. I appreciate it. I know the board does also.
Yeah, and if you do see more information that you want after reviewing some of these slides, and then at the very end of the presentation, we did do some before and after photos, which are interesting too, because you can see how the program has actually assisted and helped us maintain properties within the township.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so here, Michael, you're on still, so we will go into closed session to discuss the confidential legal opinion. Amy will stay on this site, so when we're done with the closed session, we can come back to this session to adjourn or give any other statements. So just let everybody know that. Okay, then I will see those of you who are going to the closed session.
Do we need to vote to go into closed session?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to, thank you. Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Good. Have a support?
Support.
Thank you. Michael, could you please take a roll call?
Michael, you're muted, but I think you might have asked for me and I say aye.
No, I got overzealous there and logged off on accident. So who made the motion and who supported?
I made the motion.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. And then who supported?
I did.
Summer, yeah.
Beautiful. Morinsky,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Ganguly,
Aye.
Graham Hudek,
Aye.
Segrist, aye. Slavens,
Aye.
Snyderman.
Aye.
Great, thanks. So remember, we will leave this open. Amy will stay on and then we can come back to adjourn afterwards. All right, see everybody over there. So can I have a motion to close the closed session to discuss confidential legal opinion?
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board return from closed session.
Support.
Thank you. Clerk Segers, can you please take a roll call on that motion?
Borninski,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Ganguly,
Aye.
Graham Hudek,
Aye.
Segrist, aye. Slavens,
Aye.
and Snyderman.
Aye.
Closed session is closed. Next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment? I don't see any hands or star 6, I'm sorry. Okay, so no public comment. Does anyone want to make any other comments before we close? Before we adjourn? Diane?
I'll just say Earth Day's coming up, so hopefully everybody has a little project they can do, whether it's planting a tree or recycling or composting, but happy Earth Day.
Thank you. And actually, we were down at the recycling center today. WDIV is going to be airing it on Thursday, talking about our Feet on the Street program. So that it might be shown on the Today Show. They might pick up some of it because they've been talking about Earth Day like crazy. So that'll be a Thursday morning. Also, congratulations to Clerk Segrist. This is your first meeting back on your new baby girl, Sloan. So we hope you're getting enough sleep. Do you want to say anything, new daddy, again?
Well, I appreciate you all for having the meeting last Tuesday without me while we were recovering from our stay at the hospital with the coming home with the baby. I know you passed 2 very awesome resolutions, and so I'm grateful for that. I would have voted in favor of them had I been there. And thank you to Treasurer Slavens for always following through on her duty as the what do we call it, temporary clerk, I think. And I look forward to seeing those minutes for the next meeting. But no, she's doing great, man. Sloan, baby girl was born 8 pounds 4 ounces. She's healthy and she's girls. She's nice. She's after the first one, this one is a breeze. Man, this one's a lot cooler, a lot calmer than the first one. Oh boy, he kept dose. So, but she's good. So we're getting by. Not sleeping much, but
Mama Lindsay's doing well?
Yeah, she really is.
That's good. Now you need to, so you're doing a series on Jack and playgrounds. Now you have to think of one for Sloan.
Yeah, well, as soon as she's able, we'll start taking her around at the to the playgrounds too. So I'm a lot of good research done on those playgrounds. So
You'll have a girl's point of view now.
That's right. So
All right, great. Anyone else have anything to say? Great. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Support.
Great. Clerk Segrist, please take roll call. And Amy, thanks for hanging on for us.
Borninski.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Ganguly.
Aye.
Graham Hudek.
Aye.
Segrist, aye. Slavens.
Aye.
And Snyderman.
Aye.
Great. Meeting's adjourned. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Amy, for hanging out and sharing.